Hey, my friends, do you ever feel like life is moving too fast and no matter how hard you try, you're still lost? What if I told you the secret isn't working harder, but thinking smarter? In the next few minutes, you're going to learn how to see life differently, make decisions that actually matter, and turn chaos into clarity.
When I was younger, I always believed that life was supposed to be simple. You make a plan, you work hard, and things eventually work out. That was the promise everyone repeated. Parents, teachers, neighbors, even strangers on television talking about success as if it was a formula, a recipe anyone could follow. So I tried to follow it. I worked hard. I stayed busy. I filled my calendar with tasks and my mind with dreams. But even with all that, I felt like I was walking through life blindfolded, bumping into walls I didn't know were there, struggling with choices I didn't fully understand, wondering why I kept moving but never getting anywhere meaningful. There's a painful truth many young people discover but rarely talk about openly. Effort alone is not enough. Trying your best is important, yes, but it doesn't guarantee direction. It doesn't create clarity. It doesn't automatically build a future. It's like rowing a boat with great energy but no compass. You're moving, but you have no idea where you're going. The year I learned that lesson, the world around me felt heavy. I had just finished studying, and instead of feeling excited to begin my adult life, I felt lost. Everyone around me seemed to have plans and certainty. Some had jobs lined up. Others had a passion they were ready to chase with fire in their eyes. And then there was me, 21 years old, full of ambition, but unsure where to place it, unsure which direction to move in, unsure who I was supposed to become. The confusion felt like noise. Too many ideas, too many expectations, too many voices telling me what I should do. I kept running from one option to another, hoping one of them would suddenly feel right, but nothing did. Every path looked blurry, every dream felt too big, and every choice felt like a risk I wasn't smart enough to take. Then, one evening, while sitting alone in a small cafe, staring at a notebook full of crossed-out ideas, I heard a voice from the table beside me. It belonged to a man who looked older, though in a gentle way, like someone who had lived enough life to understand its patterns. His hair was more gray than black, and his eyes carried the calmness of someone who had learned to think before reacting. He said one simple sentence: "You can't plan your next step if you don't understand where your last one took you." I didn't know if he was talking to me. I didn't know if I was supposed to respond. But the sentence felt like a reminder I didn't know I needed. I looked over, and he smiled, as if he could see the confusion sitting on my shoulders like a heavy coat. He asked me what I was trying so hard to figure out, and something about the moment, maybe the softness of his voice, or the fact that I felt unseen by everyone else, made me answer honestly. I told him I didn't know what to do with my life. I told him I felt like I was running without direction, making decisions without understanding their consequences, reacting instead of thinking. I told him I was afraid of wasting time on the wrong things, afraid of making mistakes that would take years to correct, afraid of living without a real purpose.
He listened, really listened, the kind of listening that gives you space to breathe. And when I finished talking, he leaned back and said something I would never forget. "You're not lacking ambition. You're lacking strategy." That word again, strategy. I had heard it before, but only in serious contexts, in boardrooms, chess games, military books, business meetings. It didn't feel like a word for someone like me. It didn't feel like something that belonged to ordinary life. But he insisted it did. He told me that strategy wasn't about being cold or calculating or manipulative. It wasn't about planning every second of life. It was about learning to see further than the moment in front of you. It was about understanding the chain of consequences behind every decision. It was about knowing that every action is connected to a future result.
even if we can't see it yet. Strategy was the art of stepping back, observing the bigger picture, and making choices not just for today, but for the tomorrow they would create. His words didn't magically solve my confusion, but they opened a door in my mind I never knew existed. And once that door opened, I couldn't close it. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what he said. I began to realize that most of my life had been driven by impulse. I chose things because they looked urgent or exciting, or because everyone else seemed to be choosing them. I didn't pause to understand why I wanted those things, or whether they truly aligned with who I was becoming. I didn't ask myself what each choice would mean 5 steps later. I moved without seeing. So I decided to try something different. For the first time, I slowed down. I gave myself space to think before acting. I started observing my choices the way he had advised, not as isolated moments, but as steps in a bigger pattern.
I looked at my habits, my relationships, my ambitions, my fears. I started asking deeper questions. Not what do I want right now, but where does this lead? Not what feels good today, but what builds the future I want. Not what is everyone else doing, but what actually makes sense for me. At first, this way of thinking felt unnatural. Strategic thinking wasn't something I had been taught. No one in school teaches you how to make long-term decisions when your mind is filled with short-term pressures. No one tells you that sometimes the smallest choices echo the loudest over time. And no one warns you that the comfort of the present moment can steal the clarity of your future. The first real opportunity to test this new mindset came when a small startup offered me an internship. I needed money, I needed experience, I wanted something to break the feeling of stagnation. My instincts screamed at me to accept immediately. Everyone around me said the same. Take anything you can get. Don't be too picky. It's better than nothing. But this time, something inside me whispered differently. I asked myself what the internship would lead to. I tried to imagine myself in that environment, doing that work every day. I asked myself if the experience would move me closer to the kind of person I wanted to become, or if it would simply keep me busy without real growth. It didn't feel right. Not because I was above the opportunity, but because accepting it would have been a reaction, not a decision. A short-term escape, not a long-term step. So I declined it. It was terrifying. For days, I questioned myself. What if I had made a mistake? What if that was the only chance I would get? What if turning it down was irresponsible? But then, something unexpected happened. 3 months later, a mentor I barely knew recommended me for a position at a company doing exactly the kind of meaningful work I had dreamed of. The role was challenging, creative, and aligned with the direction I wanted my life to take. Had I accepted the internship, I would have missed that opportunity entirely. By slowing down and choosing intentionally, I created space for something better to appear. That was the first moment I understood the quiet power of thinking strategically. It doesn't guarantee instant rewards. It doesn't remove uncertainty. It doesn't erase fear, but it gives you clarity. It gives you direction. It gives you the ability to say no to things that don't fit your future, even when they look tempting in the present. As the months passed, I began applying strategic thinking to more areas of my life. I looked at my habits, the small routines that shaped my days. I noticed which ones drained me and which ones built me. I noticed how time slipped away when I wasn't intentional. I realized that strategy wasn't only for big life decisions, it was also hidden in the little things. The books I read, the people I spent time with, the things I chose to care about, the thoughts I fed my mind. I observed people more closely too, not in a judgmental way, but in a curious way. I noticed how some people lived in constant reaction, always rushing, always complaining,
always stuck in the same patterns. And I noticed how others seemed to navigate life with calm confidence, making thoughtful choices even in chaos. The difference was strategy. Not intelligence, not luck, not privilege, strategy. It became clear that life is full of invisible patterns. Opportunities are often predictable if you know where to look. Mistakes repeat themselves when they aren't examined. Success grows slowly, quietly, through small intentional actions. And clarity comes not from controlling everything, but from understanding yourself deeply enough to choose wisely.
But the real transformation came the year after, when I faced a crisis I didn't see coming. Someone I trusted deeply disappointed me. It wasn't a dramatic betrayal, but it was painful. It shook my confidence. I felt angry, confused, hurt. My first instinct was to react emotionally, to cut ties, to protect myself, to run from the discomfort. But that night, as I sat alone replaying everything over and over in my mind, I remembered something I had written months earlier. Strategy is not just for success, it's also for pain. I took a deep breath and asked myself the same kind of questions I had asked before making professional decisions. What is actually happening beneath the surface? What is this moment trying to teach me? What would a reaction lead to, and what would reflection lead to? What do I want my future self to remember about how I handled this? Those questions didn't erase the hurt, but they gave me clarity. They helped me see the situation from a wider perspective. They helped me respond instead of react. And they taught me that strategic thinking is not cold or emotionless. It is a way of honoring your emotions by not letting them control your future. Slowly, my life began to shift. I realized that thinking strategically meant giving myself permission to step back, to observe, to understand, to choose. It meant accepting that not every opportunity deserved my time, not every emotion deserved my reaction, and not every path was meant for me. It meant valuing patience in a world obsessed with speed. It meant understanding that success is not a straight line, but a series of thoughtful steps taken with awareness. There were still days I felt lost. Strategy doesn't eliminate uncertainty. It gives you tools to navigate it. There were moments I made mistakes, but now, instead of drowning in them, I studied them, I learned from them, I turned them into maps. Every wrong turn revealed something useful about the right direction. Years later, I realized that strategic thinking had become second nature. It wasn't something I forced anymore. It was simply the way I understood life. I made choices based on alignment, not pressure. I moved with intention rather than impulse. I saw connections where others saw chaos. I found opportunities in places that looked empty, and I stayed calm in moments that once would have overwhelmed me. Looking back, I understood something I wish every young adult could know. Life is not about having everything figured out. It's about learning how to think, not what to think. It's about understanding that every decision becomes part of your story and therefore deserves your awareness. It's about realizing that strategy is not about controlling the future, but preparing for it with clarity and purpose. Thinking strategically doesn't make you perfect, it makes you aware. And awareness is the beginning of power.
When I talk to younger people now, students, new graduates, young professionals searching for meaning, I don't give them advice. I don't list strategies or techniques. I tell them the same story I lived. I tell them that strategy is simply the ability to pause, to observe, and to think beyond the moment you're in. I tell them that the world will always try to rush them, distract them, and pressure them. And I tell them that the strongest thing they can do is slow down, breathe, and make choices that honor their future, not just their present. Because the truth is simple. Anyone can run, but not everyone knows where they're going. Anyone can move fast, but only a few move wisely. Anyone can work hard, but only those who think strategically build a life they can actually be proud of. And once you learn to see your life from a wider perspective, once you understand that every step creates a ripple, once you begin making choices with intention, the world doesn't feel so confusing anymore. It becomes something you can shape, something you can navigate, something you can grow into with strength and clarity. Strategic thinking becomes your quiet superpower. And with that superpower, even when the world feels overwhelming, even when choices feel heavy, even when the future feels uncertain, you will still find your way. Because you're not just moving anymore, you're progressing, you're becoming, you're building a future with thought, not just effort. And that changes everything.